Before we start talking, though, I feel like we need a little bit of inspiration, though. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Come on, bring it on.
Because we need to envision a world in which we need to think differently than we've thought before. One when we can build, one in which we have a sense of responsibility to affect change, in which we see things differently than we have before, in which we feel that we can affect change, in which we hear things and see things differently than before. So we're going to play a video that we played yesterday for the first time ever, a video that was produced by Gallegos United, one of AIM members, with footage and images that were donated by our friends and members from Getty Images that continue to surprise us and gift us with their images. So thank you, Getty Images. Thank you for the incredible work from Gallegos United, and thank you to Richport Productions for the incredible music that accompanies this video and the inspiration behind it. So please enjoy this fabulous piece of work.
Here's to a world where we're all alike, where we all think the same, value the same things, where we don't talk about color, and even if we do, it's just one color, one fixed culture, one genetic makeup, one lifestyle, with one immovable set of beliefs, without questions, without change, where the status quo is never challenged, because the people on top are always right, and always the same. No evolution, no diversity, no two sides of any coin. Not now, not ever.
Thank you again, Gallegos United. An incredible piece of work. And thank you, Carlos, for your phone. I was needing a new one. Mine's kind of old, so. That new video, as you saw, encourages us to see things differently than we have before, to be more inclusive. Our goal today is to break systemic barriers that we've prevented a large portion of the ecosystem from participating equitably in the investments in the marketplace. How do you believe that diverse-owned and targeted media entities today can strategically align with brands to optimize their relationships and, in turn, their mutual growth?
Karen, start.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you all for having me. I really appreciate being here. And it's been an incredible experience, so thank you. To answer that question, I think there's an internal and an external, right? Internally, as an entity, I believe just get very, very clear on who you are and what you can deliver. Be very, very clear. And also, be very, very clear on what you don't do. Having that clarity, once you get a brief, will enable you to respond quickly, because you'll know these are our core competencies, this is what we can do. I would say externally, in partnering with the General Motors of the world, the Targets of the world, the P&Gs of the world, you need clarity on that brief. What are the objectives that this entity is after, and how can my unique value proposition directly answer that? There also needs to be greater clarity around where is this entity in their planning process, because that will alter the way that the approach that I take, right? If I am coming into contact with the General Motors after the planning process for that upcoming year has ended, I might be in a seeding mode, right? Now I'm seeding you with what my capabilities are, what my programs are, if I have experiential component, and those capabilities, and at the same time I'm creating relationship, right? I'm also connecting with other diverse owners in the space, because one, iron sharpens iron. I think we see that every time we come together. But then secondly, I might totally rock at creating custom content, that might be my thing. Distribution might be where I might need a little help. So if I can partner with another diverse-owned entity, maybe we can go in and answer a brief together. You bring the distribution, I'll bring the content, voila. And so I think thinking through these things and understanding, where am I interacting with this company in their planning cycle, and how do I adjust my approach for that is probably a really good recipe for success.
Thank you.
Let me build on that. I think those are outstanding points. 5-10 years ago, we couldn't have today. And the reason why we can have today is we've done a couple of things of critical importance. The first thing that we've done is we've empirically proven that multicultural marketing drives growth. It's without question. In fact, Lisette, I think you and the AIM organization came up with the concept that essentially almost all of the growth that's happened in the last decade has been from the multicultural segment. So the acknowledgement and recognition that our businesses are contingent upon the success of a multicultural marketing should inspire us, inspire our brand strategies to be able to allow us to invest where we need to accentuate and optimize the factors that drive growth. So that was kind of permission number one. Permission number two happened because we have changed our behavior. I love the See All film. And it, it reminded me about having grown up in the 60s, what the mindset was all about and what the mindset is now. We're now given permission to embrace all and to view the landscape as equal as we can, because we recognize the strength and diversity and the strength of inclusiveness. And having that permission provides the foundation for us to expand the thinking of where, in fact, we should be parking our money and the concepts necessary to create the strategy that each of our individual brands and businesses are going to succeed. That leads us to today, because now we have the permission to speak to the diverse media segments in a way that we've never done before, because we're saying that there is reservoirs of growth that's tied up where we've never played before. And thank you, General Motors, for essentially leading the way, because yours was one of the first voices that we've heard to say, we are going to do this. And it was a wake-up call to the industry to say, we're not only going to do this, but we're going to make something out of this that's going to show the world how much we've been missing. So those factors have allowed for that behavioral change to take hold and allow us to be here today and to make the connections, to conduct the transactions, and to begin the process of optimizing growth.
Yep, I agree. AIM's growth funds are informing the industry about the universe of targeted, owned, and diverse owned, so that smart decisions can be made moving forward. We can no longer attribute inaction to not knowing enough.
Right.
Sort of what you were just saying. After seeing the numbers that Carlos just shared, what are your thoughts about our investment goals should be, and how do we hold ourselves accountable to get there?
Ooh. Ooh. Well, I can speak for General Motors, right? So, from our standpoint, we had always been investing. What we realized on our road to being the most inclusive company in the world, which is our aspiration, is that we weren't doing enough, right? And so we took it upon ourselves, and working with our agencies and then working with, AIM and ANA, we took it upon ourselves to do some investigative journalism on ourselves. And that led us to being able to establish investment goals. But the very first step in that was an introspective step. It was us taking a look at ourselves. It was us saying, where are we in this, on this journey? Where are we? And you have to ask yourself that, right? Where am I? And so once we got very clear about that, and once we got even clearer on, that we had runway to do better, that's where the real work started. we not only established those goals, but it was our aim to continue to increase those goals. Our goal is to get to a floor of 8%, right, by 2025.
Is that for diverse zone and targeted, or is that for
Total.
endemic or?
Yeah, so that goal is for our Black-owned. So for diverse-owned and targeted, it's even higher than that. So we got very, very clear on that. And just to be, I want to say this because I know that we have a plethora of ownership here, right? We have Black-owned, we have Hispanic, Asian, and on. And I want to say this. Our model isn't to take from one group. We're not playing a shell game with the dollars. Since the moment we made our commitments, we've increased our investment across all groups. We are not robbing Peter to pay Paul, as the saying goes. We're not doing that. Everyone's investment is being increased. And we're looking to do that at the pace that, we don't want to outpace inventory availability and things like that, because we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And because we want to be a good partner, we want to help be a catalyst for stimulating that growth, and not just, being a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you say, hey, I'm going to invest all of this money, and then when the marketplace can't yield it, you say, well, see, that's not being a good partner. That's not having the right intention in this space. What is being a good partner? What is being a good steward? What is being, a leader and a champion in this space is saying, let's see where we are, let's see where we are, and let's grow from there. And so that's always been our game plan and strategy.
Can I jump in and ask you?
Please.
How's this all working out? I mean, you've obviously made a massive commitment. You've shaken up the industry, and are you feeling good about?
We're feeling good. We want to feel great.
Yeah, okay.
We're feeling good because our intention is in the right place, and our actions are following those intentions. We're feeling good because we're taking the necessary steps. I mean, I think in times past, it may be cliche to say, but when you didn't move forward with a proposal, you'd break up over a Post-it note, right? We don't do that. We have feedback sessions. We have several opportunities to connect directly and to provide. We go in looking for where the yes may be.
Yeah.
No's are easy to find. They don't take any thought or effort at all. But sometimes you got to go in and find the yes. Where can we partner? If not this way, how? And so that has required us to, in my role, I probably spend more time relationship building and in conversations and collaboration sessions than anything else. And that's intentional. It's to find the yes. So I think, as we continue to grow together, I'll be able to more succinctly answer that because we are elevating our conversation from what is the investment to what is the impact of that investment.
We know the brands have to change.
Yeah.
They have to change behavior. So if you had to tell this audience, what are the one or two things that you folks have learned along the way?
Ooh, good question.
And because we're all learning together.
Yeah.
And that's what today's session's about. What are the things that everybody should kind of really know as they jump into the water?
Yeah, well, the first thing is that we learned that we aren't to assume what the ecosystem needs, we're to ask.
Good.
So that's the first thing. We ask, and we continue to ask. What can we do to help this be successful? So that's the first thing. Coming out of that, we heard a lot of different answers, and all of them were great. One of them was, hey, it would really be great if we can get those payment terms down. Totally understand that. And so we've worked to reduce to 30-day payment terms for diverse owners to make sure that they're not carrying that capital, the weight of that capital on their shoulders. We've learned, hey, it would be great if we heard from you more than once a year at your awesome summit. Hope everybody, shameless plug, hope everybody joins, coming to a July near you. But we've heard, hey, it'd be great if we could hear from you more than once. So we started quarterly series, and we've asked for input on what that content should be. Yeah. So everything from how do I activate my digital campaign flawlessly to How do I do billing? Because a lot of companies have never worked with us
Right.
before, or any big box for that matter. And so we try to provide those resources that not only help diverse owners get business with General Motors, but beyond.
Yeah.
We've also, even though we cover certifications, new and renewal, we don't require it. We only require that you be 51% or higher diverse owned. The reason why is because we don't want to create a barrier for entry, not on our grounds. And we don't want you to have that anywhere else. So even though we don't require it, we want to enable you to have it because we know other companies may.
Right.
So it's listening and it's activating on that, I think has been the biggest thing. And our relationships have grown exponentially because of that. It's amazing what happens when you listen to people. I know it sounds so simple, but it's amazing what can happen when you just listen.
When you think about everything you just said, I mean, I just learned a ton listening to you. And I think that particularly in the small to medium-sized business arena, where they don't necessarily have the resources, they don't necessarily have the internal commitment, and to marry that up to Carlos's data, it says, well, wait a second, it's really low now. General Motors is placing investment behind it, but they're also learning a ton. And I wish I had my pen to scribble some of those things down. But those are great lessons, I think, for us to capture and actually spread as an industry, so that we can start putting that into the consideration set. Because this is how you start to break down the barriers that are preventing us from making those types of investments. Because we're still on 1960s thinking processes about how to invest in media and what we really need to do.
I'd love to hear, though, how are you attributing value to these entities as well beyond CPMs? Like, is that something that you've learned as well? How do you attribute value to the entities that you're partnering with?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say that we're elevating the conversation from investment to impact, I get one of two reactions. I either get someone who leans in or someone who folds their arms. And the folding of the arms is completely understandable, because when you hear impact, you hear measurement. And when you hear measurement, you hear of tools that have systematically been used to keep diverse-owned companies out of the consideration set. And so, I want to be very clear on what we mean by impact, right? It's not only impact to our enterprise, but it's also impact to the ecosystem. And we want to work together to define that, or perhaps even redefine that. I think a lot of times when we bring media partners on for any given campaign, we're looking at the usual suspects, right? We're the CPMs in a certain range. How many, and subsequently how many impressions, right? Reach, right? Frequency, all of those things. And I'm not saying that those aren't important, but what I am challenging, our organization and all advertisers is, what did you bring that diverse-owned media company on to do strategically? Like, stop and ask yourself, did you bring them on to cast a wide net? Like, were you going wide or were you going deep with an audience, right? And when I ask that question, right, 9.9 times out of 10, internally and externally, the answer is, well, I wanted to go deep. I wanted to build cultural relevance and cultural capital with that audience, right? And then I said, well, if you want to go deep, then why the heck are you looking at, mass reach metrics? Why aren't you looking at engagement metrics? Why aren't you looking at things? Because I bet you if you looked at those metrics, most of the diverse-owned media companies that we work with would outperform mainstream.
Right.
And so I want to change the conversation. I would love all of us to work together to change the conversation on what success looks like, right? And what are successful benchmarks in the diverse-owned space. I think we're up for a wonderful, wonderful, result there. So more to come on that from us, but that's where we are.
Cool. Strategically, you use the word strategy. And, one of the things we've been talking about, how companies and brands really need to strategically reassess. This is not just as an immediate return on an investment, but as one of the examples we've been using and talking about in this is that if you were to roll out a new product, You go to test market, you investment spend. You have a first year rollout, which is an investment spend. So you're investing in the long term.
Yep.
It's just not how much am I going to get back immediately at that point in time and how am I going to measure it. So when you embrace it from a strategic standpoint as we're putting our long-term dollars at play here in order to develop the relationships and learn about this, it puts on a whole different face of what we need to do.
I would agree with that, and to build on that, even if it was a short-term strategy, right? I think to be just and to be equitable in this space, we have to be honest.
Yeah.
I've done total market planning too. I've done it all. I've been at this a long time, which is amazing since I'm only 21. But I've done total market campaigns that by how we define it weren't successful, and no one ever said we're not going to invest with this entity again. They said, oh, well, what did we learn?
Interesting.
I'm curious as to why we don't take that same approach, right, with diverse owned, right, and diverse target. Like, why is it a one and done situation? Why are we so quick to say, oh, okay, well, so I agree. I think we need to, either way it goes, you're learning. You're learning and you're optimizing. That's media. That is our world. You strategize as best as you can. You execute as best as you can. You look at what happened and you learn from it, and then you let that inform your next go round. That should be the reality for all media entities that we interact with.
I think
not
we
just
need
some.
to create the Briand video.
I think she's
circulate it.
on it for the next time. So looking at today, and for both of you, let's start with you, Bob.
Sure.
What are, as the launch of something, when we talk about the growth fronts, and we've said it to everyone here, and we've been talking about as we've been planning this, this is a launch of something.
Yeah.
This is not the end all be all. What are your expectations as far as the growth fronts? What are your expectations as we move forward with achieving equity in this space?
Yeah, well, I think we've got to recognize this is a long-term type of thing. This is just a phenomenal launch for what I think is going to be a massive behavioral change for the business. But we also have to keep our eye on the prize, which is we have to increase our 1.2% of spend to, let's call it 4% by 2025. I mean, we have to get some exponential growth here, number one. Number two, we have to make the industry far more aware about what's going on. And that's part of my pledge as part of ANA, is that we have to change the dialogue to be far more inclusive. We talk about inclusion as a core strategy, yet all of these wonderful media companies have not been included. So I think today is a major statement for what the definition of inclusion means. And in so doing, we have to expand that to what our Maven friends have been talking about. What was it, 700 companies that Carlos mentioned? We got to get that up to 4,200, which is your total universe. And until we do, then we're not being inclusive enough. So I think if we can focus in on those two things to start, then I think the behavior of what we need to do, combined with the strategic partnerships and the returns on investments that companies like General Motors and others are seeing, I think we start to pave the way for that long-term change. And I don't want to lose sight of the small to medium-sized businesses. I mean, we're wonderfully blessed to have all the wonderful sponsors that we have today. But often we lose sight of what the small to medium-sized businesses need to go through to understand what we're going through today so that they can create with the people in the audience and around all the floors today and start to have the same types of conversations which are not necessarily taking place.
Couple of seconds of
Yeah,
last words.
I would just say, you know, I'm excited for the exposure. I think when you know better, you can do better. And so being able to expose companies to each other and to advertisers, I think is a winning formula out the gate.
Yep. This is only the beginning, folks.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thank you both
Thank
for
you.
joining me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.